You sit down at your desk, fully intending to work, but somehow the slowly drifting dust particles in the air capture your complete attention. Staring at them feels incredibly compelling, while opening the massive textbook sitting right in front of you seems physically impossible. Hours evaporate, the day slips away entirely, and with it comes a rising tide of guilt and frustration. You know exactly what needs to be done, but because you can't force yourself to start, your academic performance inevitably begins to drop. We are taught to view this paralysis as a character flaw. When you stare at your syllabus and do nothing, the immediate assumption is that you lack moral discipline, or that your inability to study is a personal failure of willpower. But your brain isn't broken. It's simply choosing the path of least resistance because the friction of the task is too high. This isn't a lack of discipline, it's an operational failure of how you are managing your internal systems. To escape this cycle, you have to stop trying to be more disciplined. You have to treat your brain like a mechanism that requires specific, deliberate psychological manipulation to function. The friction begins before you even open a book, in a phase we can call the pre-study trap. This is when your brain avoids the actual work by endlessly analyzing the syllabus and over-planning the session as a way to feel productive without actually doing anything. This chart compares time spent planning against overall task productivity. Psychological studies indicate that as the time spent planning shrinks, overall productivity increases by as much as 60%. Breaking this trap requires an immediate intervention, deliberate dopamine starvation. You have to completely remove your phone from the room. Lock away every digital distraction and force yourself to sit in absolute, agonizing boredom. When you starve your brain of cheap stimulation for long enough, the act of reading a dry textbook suddenly becomes a highly appealing alternative. While you sit there, you can manufacture immediate psychological pressure using stakes visualization. Picture the exact look on your family members' faces on result day. Imagine their specific emotional reaction to your success or failure. You are cornering your own mind. By combining a state of severe understimulation with highly emotional stakes, you artificially crush the intense friction that usually stops you from starting. Once you do start, jumping straight into the most complex topic on your syllabus is a tactical mistake that will cause an immediate crash. Task management relies heavily on kinetic momentum. This is the concept that a body at rest stays at rest, and a brain requires tangible proof of progress to sustain any real effort. You build this momentum by beginning with tasks that require almost zero effort. Rewatch a highly simplified lecture segment, skim through basic notes, or solve a mastered question. This flow diagram illustrates how completing these rapid microtasks triggers a sequence of minor neurological rewards. Each small win feeds into an expanding central metric of focus, creating a snowball effect. By lowering the initial barrier to entry, you trick your system into generating the necessary speed to smash through high-difficulty topics later on, without burning out early. Eventually, the mid-session slump will hit. Your static study desk transforms into a symbol of boredom, and your brain begins to subconsciously shut down the operation. Counteracting this requires environmental shock. Look at this setup: a laptop and highlighters arranged on an industrial washing machine in a concrete garage. Relocating to entirely incongruous spaces like kitchens or garages forces your brain to process novel, unexpected stimuli, jolting it awake. We also have to acknowledge biological reality. The modern brain is simply incompatible with long, unbroken study blocks. Expecting hours of continuous attention from yourself is setting up a failure condition. This circular dial shows the data-backed timing protocol required to combat attention fatigue. You execute precisely 20 minutes of absolute unbroken focus in the red sector, followed strictly by a 5-minute cognitive break in the blue recovery sector. To maintain this pace, you can engineer external pressure. Place a competitive bet with a peer on your study volume. Weaponize your own fear of losing and the threat of mockery to push yourself through the friction. Sustained focus requires continuous, active disruption. By changing your physical environment and manufacturing external stakes, you prevent your brain from slipping back into its baseline resting state. The final phase begins the exact moment you achieve a solid, pre-planned goal and complete your chronological study timeline. Skipping the final reward is a strategic mistake. If you treat your brain like a machine that doesn't need a payout, you are effectively training it to avoid hard work in the future because the effort yields no gratification. You must deploy an effective neurological reward. Eat a high-value snack, play a specific game, or watch exactly one television episode. Crucially, this compensation must strictly follow significant milestones, not arbitrary 10-minute intervals. This cyclical flowchart maps out the architecture of the motivation loop. Delivering a definitive reward at the end of a session encodes the agonizing preceding hours as a positive, repeatable cycle, reinforcing the habit for your next attempt. Studying is a ruthless game of resource management and psychological trickery. Once you abandon the myth of willpower and learn to manipulate your own hardware, the process of sitting down to work becomes